Now, these behaviors that we talked about that compose the time series, these 4 different behaviors, can be seen in 2 different ways: additive and multiplicative. Just to give you some examples of what we're talking about, when we look at trend and we talk about additive trend, we're talking about something that increments constantly through time. So, for example, 20 boxes each week. If you have something that increments 20 boxes each week, you're basically going to have, and let me draw this for you, you're going to have a constant trend. This is what we call an additive trend. I'm going to go to an example with multiplicative, with noise. We're talking about percentage values. So here, by saying that it varies by 30% percentually, right? We're looking at a series that may look something like, let me see if I can, yep, something that looks like this. And if you have a value of 100 in average, then 30% of noise, we will be looking at something like 130 or 70, for example, right? But if you have a value of 1,000, then we're looking about 1,300 to 700. And this is important about multiplicative and additive. Why is this? Because in the case where we had this 100 cases in average that we talked about, which is 130 and 70, instead of talking about 30% noise, we could talk about, for example, noise of 30 units for 30 cases. And if that's the case, and if you have 100 cases in general, then we're talking about something similar. But if now we're talking about something that has 1,000 units and we're still talking about 30 units of noise, then we're looking about 3% of noise, right? So this is important to talk about in terms of additive and multiplicative behavior. What would be a multiplicative trend? And think about it a little bit. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about that for every $2 that we increase price, you sell 3 less boxes, right? This is a typical case of additive behavior. Well, okay, going back to trend, multiplicative behavior is that you grow 3% every month, for example. So then you're going to have something that looks like this, which has kind of exponential behavior. And it's completely different from the trend that we saw before, right? So these are some of the cases, examples that you can get for each one of the behaviors at the additive and multiplicative side. Why is this important? You have some models that are additive, some models that tackle these things in a multiplicative way. When is this important again? When do you have a difference between additive and multiplicative? When you have a change in your base. So again, if you're talking about a constant series, right? Talking about additive or talking about multiplicative is the same thing. But if you have a trend series, talking about 30% each time is not the same as talking about 30 units. 30 units means less, it means more in here, percentually speaking, than here. 30 units in here will be percentually less than in here. When you have seasonality, then again it's again important. Having 30% seasonality is not the same as having 30 units of seasonality. Okay, and this is very important to separate what we call additive and multiplicative behavior. When we talk about elasticity of demand, generally you're talking about multiplicative behaviors. Generally, when we look at behaviors, how they actually happen, most of them are multiplicative. And an example of additive behavior is when you have bundles, for example, or combos, promotion products that are in limited edition. So basically, you sell whatever you are putting in there in the market. So that has a cap. So if you're selling 30 of those, it doesn't matter if your base is of 100,000 or 100 million, you're still going to sell those 30. So that's additive. In terms of price elasticity, it is very important because you have a 10% or 100% elasticity, meaning that if you increase price by 10%, then you're going to decrease volume by 10%. It's not the same when you sell 1,000 cases, which the result will be 100, than when you sell 100 million cases, in which your difference will be 10 in the 10 millions.